All right, we begin with a big day in Washington. The Supreme Court hearing arguments today on DACA. A reminder, young DACA recipients or dreamers were brought to the U.S. illegally as children, but are currently protected as part of the DACA program put in place by President Obama. Over 700,000 in the U.S. are waiting to see what this decision means for their future. So one of those dreamers joins me now, Silverio Arzate Patlin. I just want to ask you, what are you feeling as this begins today, and what are your biggest fears?
Well, thank you so much for having me. What I'm feeling, confusion. Um, we don't know what's next. We don't know what's. I've been working hard for the past 4 years in college. I don't know if all of that's now to waste because of this. Will I not be able to use my degree and put my degree to work? I'm confused and scared.
Yes, absolutely. And you're at college in Nashville, Tennessee. That's correct.
Yes. I attend a Christian school here in Nashville, private Christian school, because we do have to pay out of state tuition if we go to a public university here.
So I just want to go back a little bit. I just want you to tell us the first time you understood that you were undocumented.
I've always known, Kimberly. I've always known because there's always been that fear of my mother maybe not coming home that night. There's always been that fear. And I remember crossing as a kid. I remember what we went through. So I've always known that in some way I'm not supposed to be here. But in another way, I've always known this as home as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like you sort of live with this feeling your whole life. And I want you to help us understand, what are some of the misconceptions that people have about dreamers in this country?
That we get benefits, that we are paying our taxes and everything, but we still have, like I mentioned earlier, we still have to pay out of state tuition. We only have the right to come and work. We don't get benefits from the state, and that's a huge misconception. That's a huge misconception that they have about illegal immigrants, that we get benefits, and there's no benefits that come with it. It's not real.
And you've been in this country, in the U.S., your entire life. So what would it even mean for you to return to Mexico now?
One, I don't know Mexico. It's scary because of everything that's going on. Just me being here in the States, me growing up here in the States, puts a target on my back if I go. I speak Spanish very well. However, there's still some things that I mess up, that I'm not saying correctly. I might mispronounce. That right there lets them know, oh, he's not from here. Puts fear in my family. Am I going to be okay? It's scary. It's just imagining being back there with everything going on. I don't think I would be okay.
And you have other siblings that are in the U.S. with you or in Mexico?
My siblings are in Mexico. And one of my siblings that's in the United States was not able to get DACA. Even though she went back, got her GED, she was not able to get DACA because she got her GED during Trump era, and DACA had already been, no new applications were being taken.
Yeah, so Silverio, they're starting these arguments today. The decision is not until the summer of 2020. But what happens in the meantime? What's happening with you in the meantime as they figure this out?
Well, right now what happens is we wake our generation up. We wake our people up and we say, we already got President Obama to sign the executive order, because that was not President Obama's own will. That was not what his heart told him. It was, first he said he wasn't able to do anything, and it was undocumented youth that pressured President Obama to sign that executive order. So this is when we wake everybody up and we say, go out, call your representatives, call your senators, and tell them, protect DACA. No, and not only protect DACA, find a pathway to citizenship, not only for DACA students, but for everybody here in America that deserves to be here.
Yeah. And what do you say to people what's your message to people who think that dreamers shouldn't be in the country?
this is home. This is home. I pay my taxes. I contribute to society, and it was not my choice to be here. I love it. I love it, and I am extremely grateful. For those who say I shouldn't be here, I would like to say walk a mile in someone's shoes before saying this. Try to understand the full picture before coming to a conclusion so quick and saying, no, you shouldn't be here. Oh, you don't deserve an education, or you're not a human being because you're not a U.S. citizen. And in every other way, I am a U.S. citizen because I know the history. I've been here, and the only thing that's stopping me right now is the actual papers.
Yes. Silverio, I appreciate you sharing your story. It represents hundreds of thousands of stories of people going through this right now. So thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you.
Yes. And guys, we're going to stay in Washington. Tomorrow, a historic day, as we've reported, the first televised hearings in the impeachment probe of President Trump. The House looking into a potential abuse of power on the president's July 25th call to Ukraine. So I'm joined by Karen Travers at the White House, and we have Catherine Faulders in our D.C. bureau. Catherine, I'll start with you. Some more transcripts released in those closed-door hearings, but I just want you to explain what we can expect for tomorrow's public hearings.
Yeah, so tomorrow we're going to hear from Bill Taylor. He was one of these top diplomats in Ukraine advising the policy as it related to Ukraine, and also George Kent, who is a senior State Department official. Now, what we will hear from these two, now you see them there, Marie Yovanovitch, the former U.S. ambassador, we'll hear from her on Friday, but those two that you see right there, Taylor and Kent, we will learn more and perhaps have them shed more light on what we've seen in their closed-door deposition transcripts. They're going to be focusing on that back-channel diplomacy that they described from the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, how there was confusion, how there was concern. Bill Taylor will likely hear about those text messages that came up where he said that it would be wrong to have this conditionality based on holding up aid to launch these political investigations into the president's political rivals. So we'll be hearing a lot about Giuliani, but I want to say that Schiff really wants to focus on the credibility of these witnesses. Republicans have been trying to undermine their credibility, specifically those three there. Republicans are likely going to say they weren't on the phone call, they don't have any direct knowledge of this, but the reality is they have most of these witnesses corroborated the whistleblower's account, Kimberly, and what Republicans are going to do here, they released this 18-page memo where they said that in order to understand these events surrounding this impeachment inquiry, we need to understand, quote, the president's state of mind as it related to his interactions on that July 25th phone call with President Zelensky, which is, of course, at the center of this inquiry. They want to focus on four key pieces of evidence. This is Republicans. They want to focus on the July 25th call summary. They want to point out that it showed no conditionality or evidence of pressuring the Ukrainians to launch these investigations. The second thing, they want to point out that President Zelensky and Trump both have said there was no pressure. They want to say that the Ukrainian government was not aware of a hold on U.S. security assistance at the time of that call. And they also want to point out in these hearings that both presidents said that U.S. security assistance flowed to Ukraine in September of 2019, and this occurred without Ukraine investigating the political rivals. So they're going to hit on those 4 points, and they're going to say, look, we can't understand the president's state of mind just from this transcript.
All right, so the July 25th call is at the center of this, but Karen, President Trump is now focused on this other transcript from his first call to the Ukraine. What's in this document?
We don't know yet, but the president says that he will release it by the end of the week. And Kimberly, he had said over the weekend it would come out today. He then said yes by Tuesday. Now we're looking at the week's end. The president says the April phone call he had with President Zelensky is the more important phone call of the two. This call was placed in a largely congratulatory way. It was a chance to check in with the newly elected leader of a country that, of course, is critical to U.S. foreign policy. There are not a lot of questions questions about what the controversy might be on this call. In fact, Alexander Vindman, the National Security Council official who raised red flags about the July phone call, he says that the one in April went very well. It went according to plan. So not a lot of controversy that we know of right now. So why is the president doing this? Well, he's going to say, if my April phone call was perfect, so was the July phone call. And Kimberly, those two things are difficult to square, but certainly that's something that the White House will be pushing as a defense as we start to hear from these witnesses publicly.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. And Karen, while all of this is being televised tomorrow, President Trump will be meeting with the president of Turkey, President Erdogan.
President Trump will have a couple hours in the morning of free schedule to check out what is happening up on Capitol Hill. I think we should assume he will be very tuned in to the hearing taking place at 10 o'clock Eastern time. But then midday, the president welcomes the Turkish president to the White House. Series of meetings, a working lunch. They'll have a press conference later in the afternoon. So, Kimberly, we will have several opportunities to hear from President Trump tomorrow and get his firsthand reaction to what House Democrats are putting out in public tomorrow.
All right. I want to thank Karen Travers at the White House and Catherine Faulders on Capitol Hill. Thank you guys for joining us. And you all can keep it here for full coverage of the impeachment hearing starting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. All right. So we move on to an update on former President Jimmy Carter, the oldest living ex-president, hospitalized on Monday for brain surgery related to his recent falls. And the former president is now in recovery after that surgery. And our Steve Osunsami is in Atlanta with the latest. Steve, good to see you. If you can just tell us, how is he doing?
Well, we just got an update from his spokespeople who tell us he's doing all right. This is according to their statement that he is recovering following surgery this morning to relieve pressure on his brain from a subdural hematoma. They report there are no complications from surgery and that President Carter will remain here hospitalized at Emory University Hospital behind me for as long as necessary and that he's here with his wife. He has been suffering a number of falls lately, which led to this. Those falls caused a blood clot to form on his brain, and they had to relieve the pressure from that in this surgery. Kimberly.
Yeah, and Steve, we know he's 95 years old, and as you said, he's had a number of falls, but it also shows he's pretty resilient.
He is. After one of his falls where he had to get 14 stitches, he then got up and traveled to Nashville to build homes for Habitat for Humanity, and he had a black eye. I'm sure you remember seeing some of those pictures. After another fall where he fractured his pelvis, he then continued on with his Sunday school teachings. He teaches Sunday school at the church in his hometown. He held Sunday school that Sunday after that fall. He is one of the most resilient 95-year-olds you've probably ever seen. And of course, everyone is here praying and hoping for a speedy recovery in this instance as well.
All right, Steve, we appreciate the updates. Thank you so much. And we're glad that he's okay. All right, guys, we move overseas to the unrest in Hong Kong. As we've been reported, there were clashes between pro-democracy protesters and police escalating into violence this week, leaving one person shot and another man on fire. And a reminder, these protests began over a controversial extradition bill, but now protesters are fighting for their general autonomy from mainland China. So with no end in sight, our Ian panel is right there on the ground with the latest. Ian?
Hi there, Kimberly. It's late in the evening here in Hong Kong, but the protests are still going on. If you can hear the sound up there, the protesters have just suddenly put this blockade across the road here. You can see there's like huge chunks of earth there. These are parts of signs, barriers, bricks, an old television, and some rubbish has been strewn across. And then if we just have a look in the other direction, you can see that the road is empty because they've set up another barricade down on the other side there, and you can see they're trying to pull apart this line of fencing here, and that's pretty much what they've been using. There are a number of key standoffs that have taken place today, primarily focused around the universities, and there are two universities just in this area now. There seems to be some kind of attempt to try and stop the police from coming in here because there's another university far to the north of here, Chinese University, where there's been an intense standoff. Some people are saying the fiercest clashes we've seen yet, with lots of tear gas being fired in there, rubber bullets as well. They're now bringing in water cannon, and the students there who feel that the police have come onto their campus are trying to resist, trying to hold their ground. So this is the situation that you're starting to see late at night. Suddenly these barricades are set up. The police will no doubt come in, and you have these running skirmishes. What I have noticed coming back here, time after time, is that gradually it gets a little more violent. Gradually more people are getting injured. We've seen someone shot yesterday by the police. We saw a bypasser who was doused in some kind of flammable liquid, and that was set alight. And it feels to me it's just getting worse, getting more violent. No end in sight. The State Department is urging some kind of reconciliation, condemning violence on both sides. But the truth is, I don't see any pathway to reconciliation. There's no negotiations between the two. And I think this is just going to get worse, and more people are going to get injured. Kimberly?
All right, apocalyptic scenes there. Thank you, Ian. We appreciate that. And guys, have you heard this name yet? Rodney Reed. He's a black man that has spent 21 years on death row in a Texas prison for a murder he says he did not commit. And in just 8 days, he's scheduled to be executed unless Texas Governor Greg Abbott listens to the growing chorus of people asking to stop it. And our Marcus Moore is on the ground in Dallas with the latest. Marcus, you know, it is very scary to think that a man could be killed in 8 days if he's actually innocent. Can you just remind us of what this case is all about?
Well, Kimberly, good to be with you this morning. First of all, this is a case that's been getting so much attention. Rodney Reed, a 51-year-old man on death row right now here in Texas, convicted for the murder of a 19-year-old girl, Stacy Stites. This happened in Bastrop, Texas, which is a town about 45 minutes east of the Texas capital of Austin. She was found in April of 1996, brutally murdered along the side of the road. Prosecutors and authorities said that she had been strangled, and early on there were two prime suspects in this case. Stites' fiance at the time, Jimmy Fennell, and then Rodney Reed, who is someone she was having a secret relationship with, an affair with. And Reed is the one who ended up being convicted of the murder. And if you go online right now, Kimberly, all you have to do is type in Rodney Reed and you get a plethora of pictures and articles about this story that, as you said, has been gaining in momentum in terms of attention, and the calls for Reed for his execution to either be stayed or for him to get a reprieve. And we're talking about people, celebrities, and also lawmakers on both sides of the aisle that have been calling for the governor to issue an order for there to be another look at this case.
Yeah, you're right. An outpouring of bipartisan support from Beyonce all the way to Ted Cruz. But if they're unsure, why can't they just stop and do a new trial until they're certain? I mean, this is a man's life.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot at stake here, Kimberly, and it will just have to go through the process. I mean, it's up to the governor to decide whether or not this execution will move forward. And certainly attorneys on both sides of this have their views. And one of the key points that Reed's attorneys are making is that they have new witness testimony that not only questions the motives behind this. People saying that Fennell actually confessed to killing his fiancée, they're saying, and that this was all related to are rooted in that affair. And that race, Kimberly, is a major factor here. We're talking about Reed, who was a black man who was convicted of killing a young white woman and was convicted by an all-white jury. And that's those are some of the key details that critics on his side are bringing up, and saying that key evidence at the crime scene was not tested for DNA that would link Reed to that actual crime scene and to the murder itself. The only evidence, DNA evidence that was used, and it was used to convict Reed, was his semen that was found with the young lady who was killed. So it was Stites. And they are saying that if other evidence had been tested, it would prove that that Mr. Reed was not at the crime scene, and also that prosecutors have convicted the wrong man of this crime. And Kimberly, I've got to tell you, you're talking about the publicity that this has gotten and the attention, the calls from celebrities. I haven't I grew up here in Texas. I covered I don't know if you recall, the Gary Graham execution back in 2000. That was another case that the entire country was watching, and there were massive protests, people trying to stop that execution because they said an innocent man was on death row. And here we are again, 20 years later with this case, and we still don't know what the governor rather, will decide. And certainly we've seen protest over the weekend in Austin, and there's another one, Kimberly, scheduled at the state capitol where people are expected to continue to implore the governor to stop this execution that's set for November 20th.
Yeah, it's an urgent situation, 8 days. So, Marcus, we appreciate the updates and breaking it down for us. Good to see you. All right, guys, we move on to the weather. Winter came early this year, apparently because that Arctic blast is making its way east today. Temperatures dropping to record lows, putting many parts of the country in a deep freeze. And our meteorologist, Rob Marciano, is in Syracuse, New York with the latest. Rob?
Hi, Kimberly. Well, as you can see, winter has arrived here in central New York, and it's on its way for much of the eastern two-thirds of the country. Snow falling here, yes, in Syracuse, which they're no stranger to snow, but this isn't really lake effect snow, at least not yet. It's only a few inches, but it's a kind of dense early season snowfall that's made the roads a little bit slick and underfoot, certainly some dicey situations. A lot of accidents across the country, really from the Midwest all the way down into the Mid-South. I mean, from Missouri to Pennsylvania and through Tennessee. Snow, ice, dangerous driving conditions, but the cold air really is the big situation here. Where this is called Clinton Square in downtown Syracuse. You can see it's snow covered. We've got about 2-3 inches of snow here. The monument that everybody knows here in the queues. And these walls here, you get a good look at them. They look like they belong on an ice skating rink. Well, that's exactly what that is. This is where they put the holiday and winter ice skating rink. But it's so early in the season, they haven't even built it yet. So it gives you an idea, even for Syracuse standards in central New York, this is an early season cold snap. And that, of course, is the big story, just how cold temperatures are getting. 50-degree drops in some spots. Temperatures here plummeting as well. And we could have wind chills. We should have wind chills, easily be below zero by this time tomorrow. So certainly feels like the middle of January here, even though we're barely into the middle of November here in Syracuse. We've already had hundreds of flights delayed or canceled today. So if you are traveling by air, you're certainly going to want to call your carrier, regardless of where you're starting from or going to, because there is that ripple effect. Temperatures on the way south, all the way into the deep south. Hope you're ready for it. It's going to be a little bit frigid, to say the least, here over the next couple of days. Kimberly?
Thank you, Rob. Not ready or prepared for this winter. All right, guys. And Netflix is getting some competition. It was Apple TV Plus earlier this month, and today the launch of Disney Plus, another new streaming service with a library of original new shows and classic favorites. So I want to bring in Digital Trends news editor Matt Katz to break it down. Matt, good to see you. I want to ask you the same thing I asked you last time. Is this something that you think people will spend extra money on?
Definitely. I think that the price is going to get a lot of people in. It's just $7 a month. And more importantly, it's got essentially the comfort food of television. You've got all of your Disney classics. You got every episode of The Simpsons. You've got Disney Channel original movies, Marvel, Star Wars. This is probably the closest competitor to Netflix that we've seen so far.
And so from your estimation, there are a number of selling points?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think that it's going to bring in a lot of different audiences, from young kids to nostalgic millennials to even folks that want to see National Geographic documentaries. There's a whole section of National Geographic content on Disney Plus that's going to just bring in all sorts of different audiences.
Yeah, because in comparison to Apple TV, there's a lot more that's on offer here, it seems like, a lot more in the library.
Oh, yeah. Apple has just a handful of shows. They're kind of going for the quality over quantity, although their shows have been a mixed bag. So far, a lot of the shows that are on Disney Plus are the sort of things that people go to maybe Netflix for. The two most popular shows on Netflix are The Office and Friends, and that's because people go to that streaming service to watch things that they love, and that's kind of what Disney has identified as the crux of Disney Plus so far.
Yeah, and Matt, so it launched today, but it wasn't without a few glitches and a few bumps in the road.
Oh, yeah. We've had reports from a lot of people all around the country that have had problems accessing Disney Plus. Some people can't log in. Some people can't download the app. Other people can get in but have their shows just stop midstream with an error message. That's something that we have been looking into here at Digital Trends. But in the past maybe 15 minutes or so, all of a sudden, a lot of these problems have been resolved, or at least partially resolved. So I would not be shocked if by the end of the day, things are smooth sailing.
Yes, and when I asked you about Apple Plus, you said you were not going to buy that service just yet. What about Disney?
Disney, I had signed up for a while ago. I'm a big Marvel and Star Wars fan, so they got me on that. But for me, I think the real strength is I can go back and watch every single episode of The Simpsons from when I was a kid, which I think a lot of millennials around my age are excited to do. So that's got me for the long term.
All right, Matt Katz, digital editor for Digital Trends news editor. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. And guys, a quick disclosure. We want to remind you that Walt Disney is the parent company of ABC News. All right, continue to take care of yourselves. And if you're around, you can stick around for the briefing room at 3:30 p.m. Then you can check out World News Prime at 8 p.m. And if you want to stay updated on all of these headlines, you can go to abcnews.com or download the app. I'm Kimberly Brooks, and I'll see you tomorrow.